Welcome everybody to Funktasy Unmuted. Today we're exploring the evolution of the creator. In the music and design world, we often talk about the final product, but we rarely talk about the tools that changed us. We've identified three massive shifts from the early technicians of the 90s, which we'll call the past, to the Canva speed of today, so the present, to the AI directors of tomorrow, future. So we're gonna let the team dive into these areas to see how Funktasy stays ahead of the curve. First, we have to look back. There was a time where you could just not make a graphic. You had to understand layers, paths, and complex software. It was an exclusive club. So like, there, Monica and whoever wants to join, take us back to when design was the lead. What was the biggest barrier for designs back then?
Yeah, graphic design like way before the 90s, like 1920s. There was a lot of measuring involved, and I think I mean, you work with it, you can't escape measuring, but that's kind of like my weakness. So that would have been a struggle like with me. And like right now where it's like things are easier because it's more digital. It was a little tougher to be a graphic designer because we didn't have like the digital leisure that we do now. You make a mistake too, like that takes more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back then in graphic designing, it wasn't just tools like Adobe didn't even exist. You actually had to learn carving techniques as well as using a printing press, right?
Yeah, printing press, dark rooms too.
Photography development. And
Yeah.
I was also reminded recently that when Adobe came onto the scene, tools what we consider the pro tools today were actually the only tools, digitally speaking, for graphic designers. So owning these tools and operating them did actually require a considerable amount of practice in order to just be a graphic designer. Uh, you couldn't just like read up on a book of how to make layouts and how to draw with vectors. You actually had to, get mentored on how to use these tools because they were very cumbersome.
A lot of artwork too. Manual artwork was involved more too, like painting, a lot of pencil drawing, but you like I said, you can't really mess up or else you have to start over. It's going to take a lot longer. Of course, that's when print design was way, well, that was the only thing, not no digital. So yeah, you have to really be careful.
Even like talking about like the early Photoshop, I mean, there weren't that many tools on there to begin with, you know. You had your simple like maybe a crop, maybe you can adjust a little bit of contrast. So even in early Photoshop, it was very limited in features, and you didn't even have any layers or anything. So you have to be very careful how you choose, because there, and I do know that back then I'm pretty sure there was no undo. So if you made a mistake, that's pretty much in a Photoshop, you have to like go from the beginning. So you have to be very careful on the edits that you made.
Yeah, so basically we went from like needing a degree and like 1,000 hours to figure out a design to just basically downloading a template, for example, in Canva, right? So like now speed is the only thing that matters in social media, like who can get it faster. So like we could call it the Canva area. It's fast, accessible, but is it like all the same? Does it everything look the same? So like how do we balance the need for speed with the need for original fantasy branding in the Canva era? What do you guys think?
On the world of graphic design today, yeah, basically everybody has tools in order to become a graphic designer. Um, and actually, that trend has gone all the way back to the late 90s. Um, I think they liked calling it the grunge aesthetic. I'm not talking about the music genre. I'm actually talking about an aesthetic of when amateur graphic designers would actually have the tools to make designs for album covers. Things like Doolittle, the album cover for Doolittle by the Pixies is a good example. It's chaotic. There's a lot of photo cropping and some things that don't really make sense. It borders into Dadaism, uh, that sort of graphic design language, and that embracement uh, of the human touch in graphic design is something we certainly see today, uh, because since anybody can be a graphic designer, there really has to be a lot of conviction behind designs, real purpose. You can't just make a clear layout anymore, or else it's just going to feel like everything else. You need to really analyze what you're designing for, who you're designing for, where it's going to appear, so that the design has impact.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, I was the first image that came to mind was the the Sex Pistols album covers, how there was a lot of imperfectness. There was a lot of basically breaking the rules. But as you were saying, it fit the aesthetics because the Sex Pistols, for those who don't know, it's a punk band, and they're very much anti-rules. They don't care about the rules. So if you look back at their album covers, their graphic design is going against all the graphic design rules, which is basically it's a touch to their music itself. So it's very interesting.
And because nowadays a lot of graphic design can be done digitally, there's been a lot more incorporation with physical processes in design nowadays. Like recently, there's been a revival of using film photography rather than digital photography. Not because film photography is technically better, it's because there's an aesthetic to it. There is a certain vibe, a certain memory associated with film photography. Um, I mean, we've recently seen it, at least in my sphere, while we're talking about album covers, with the Foo Fighters' latest album, Your Favorite Toy. Uh, the aesthetics for that, it would fit perfectly in the 1970s punk scene, with mentioning the Sex Pistols. Um, and I think that has to do with, uh, perfect graphic design. The tools of Canva and Adobe Illustrator and InDesign, you can make a perfect layout. You can make a perfect, clean poster or anything like that, but it probably won't capture as much attention as those imperfect, uh, but purposeful designs.
Yeah, first person who comes to mind is David Carson and like all this stuff that he did for like the Nine Inch Nails, where again he was another graphic designer. He just broke all the rules. He wasn't a graphic designer actually.
Definitely right now, I feel like we're kind of like stuck of like looking for the aesthetic that we had on the past because now it's like everything's so repetitive. But on the other hand, we're looking at what's next. Like basically we're moving away from pushing pixels into a world where basically we prompted because all the Adobe programs right now have the generative fill or the AI text, or you can just basically create a picture with AI. So, like, friend Mike or Nicole, like, do you have something to add about what the future could be? Like, how is AI going to change, or how we like could build the future for future graphic designers that are going to be on the future?
I believe that AI will most likely become a very natural part of our daily and professional lives, much like, for example, computers and the internet have now. And I think rather than being seen as a separate tool, AI will be seamlessly integrated into how we work and create and communicate. And especially in regards to creative roles and graphic design, I think that AI will be shifting the role of creatives actually from execution to direction. So instead of spending most of their time creating assets manually, I think creators will be increasingly focusing on defining ideas and setting direction and especially making strategic decisions. And as we can see nowadays already, like you've mentioned before, that basically AI is integrated in every platform, every program that we use. I think it will be taking over production tasks like generating visuals or creating layouts and adapting formats that can generally be automated. And of course, this will also reduce manual workload and changes how design work is approached. And that's why I think that from a standpoint of designers, they will most likely be evolving into creative strategists. So the role will probably no longer be about designing individual assets, but about shaping brand identity and also, for example, prompting more, and also be like super still being skilled, because I still believe that they have to know how to, for example, correct mistakes made by AI. But I think it will be more now. They will have the main focus on strategy and general creative direction. So I believe that AI can generate large amounts of content, but yeah, I think that humans are still needed to create and refine and ensure authenticity.
Yeah,
Just kind of going based off of what Fran said, like as a graphic designer, I for sure use like Photoshop's generative fill. But one thing that I think we really prioritize here at Funktasy is we use AI to help us. We don't use it solely to just create what's in our brains. Like the graphic designers, I think on our team specifically, we're good at making our own concepts and using inspiration. Haas always says, it's okay to imitate, not duplicate. So we use, we go along with the trends and we use AI for like, maybe we ask chat to help us with a design problem. Like I'll send chat a screenshot of what I'm working on for the Instagram and be like, hey, like, something feels a little off. I'm not sure what it is. Like, is it this? Is it this? And for me, chat actually helps me a lot with like my creative process. So if I don't have like another graphic designer like on hand, which is kind of difficult nowadays because like we're all remote, we all have our own separate lives, outside of our work and whatnot. I can ask chat to kind of like help me with my design process, etc. I don't know if the other GDs do that, but I personally do that. But another thing that I think that we'll be getting into the future is right now we're kind of in this like what I call everyone's a designer era. So like because of tools like Canva where they have templates that even people just use for their Instagram carousels or for their LinkedIn profile picture, like what literally Canva has so many different things. I think it's a great tool, but because we're getting into that, like design has become like super accessible, which is great. I love that art is becoming more accessible to people, kids, people who just want to dabble in, etc. But it's also changing how people value actual designers. And I think that's a problem that we're going to be facing in the future more, which is a bit sad to think about. But that kind of leads me to the next thing. So like I talked about, like tools like Canva, template-based things, you don't necessarily need formal training to make something look polished. They just give you a template, you plug stuff in, you're like, that looks great. But it could be a bit like design is more like accessible than ever, which is great, but accessibility doesn't equal expertise. Like just because you use Canva doesn't necessarily mean you're a trained graphic designer. Which kind of leads me to the next point of like there's a devaluation of graphic designers. Like I said, like it's great that you can make your own graphics, etc., but it doesn't necessarily make you a graphic designer. And it does kind of step on the toes of us graphic designers who did go to school and then learn the design of principles and elements and like our core things, like spacing, hierarchy, all of that. I've definitely had moments where someone's coming to me with a Canva template and I'm like, that's great. I don't want to step on your toes, but from a GD perspective, spacing could be a bit better. So like I'll fix it, etc. And it's, fine. Which leads me into like my third point. So right now in the like graphic design job hunting industry, a lot of companies are asking graphic designers to have video editing expertise, which we did not learn in school, motion graphics, which some of us touched on in school but not necessarily feel the most confident doing, social media management. If you're not in an internship like you work for Funktasy where you can have that experience, a lot of people don't get that experience. Marketing strategy, we don't learn that really in school. That's like the other end of graphic design. We learn some things, but we don't necessarily learn things that marketers or people in marketing degree learn. And sometimes even like content creation or animation, stuff that It's a lot of different like subcategories that, like I said, like graphic design is completely different than all of that. And they're great extra things you can learn, but it's not necessarily what we went to school for. I did not go to school for my bachelor's and learn video editing. I learned that on the side. I touched a little bit of base on motion graphics, sure, but a lot of this stuff you're learning outside of what your degree is required. And that's a bit frustrating when the job, it's like they're asking one person to do the job of like five people, which I get. Businesses want to save money, etc. But it's a bit like it's a bit sad, and it's a bit sad to see, and it does worry me for the oncoming new generation of people who want to be a graphic designer. They just think that they can take classes on Canva. It's like, no, you can go to bachelor's and get your bachelor's or whatever. But yeah, so I kind of touched that based on that. The fourth problem was like the one person does everything. So one person does the video editing, does post the content, makes the graphics, all of that, when really that could be like a 2 or 3 person job. But maybe companies want to save money or they see an easier way out. I understand that, but it just, yeah, it's kind of sad. So like to just kind of wrap that up, like good design isn't just about making something look nice. It's about communication, intention, understanding the audience. That's the core stuff that we learned in school. Just because anyone can design now doesn't mean design as a profession should be treated as less valuable. So future design shouldn't be about replacing designers. It should be about empowering those with better role. So I think that's something we should keep a positive outlook on for the future. But it might take over a little bit for AI and whatnot. But yeah, my 2 cents on that.
Just kind of continuing on that, I think it's going to be important for actual humans to still be involved because, like she said, anybody will be able to type whatever they want into some sort of AI generator, but you'll need a real person to emotionally connect that content to an audience. You can't just say, do A, B, and C, and then it'll give you something that people actually connect with. So we're still going to need actual people to, continue on with making stuff.
I do think that's actually an important thing to discuss. There's bits and pieces with graphic design that deal so much with things as abstract as language and emotion and nostalgia. That's stuff that can't really be replicated using patterns or yeah, algorithms. It takes a certain bit of chaos in order to connect on that sort of level.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think this is a lot to take in for somebody that's like looking at the 3 eras because they're like completely different. And we're not talking of like 100 years. We're just talking of like what, 20, 30 years, and everything changed, especially for like graphic designers. And I think that's really important that like moving forward, we're still like evaluating what they're worth it and like still putting their input because like the human brain doesn't work as an AI machine. Like I think the humans would still have to take the final decision, even if they don't do like the whole part of like the design. Somebody has to like accept, okay, is this good or is this bad? Like, do we have to redo it? Do I have to edit it? I think that's the most important thing, like moving forward. And I don't know if Manfredo, you agree with me or you want to add something, but I think for my part, this is everything. I think we did great, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything to add. Thank you everyone for your input. You guys all brought some really, really insightful stuff. And I think at the end of the day, I agree with everyone. AI is very scary. And it can be threatening, I guess you can say to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, I do agree that we still do need that human touch because at the end of the day, a computer's a computer. It's only gonna know what's on the internet, but it cannot replicate emotions to the way that humans can, you know. So thank you everyone for your input, and yeah, see you at the next Unmuted.